them, and people say, oh my God, HAARP was used, I've got the evidence, and people are looking at these websites online that are showing spikes in HAARP. Well, there's a correlation between HAARP being used and the magnitude 9.0 earthquake. Yet, at the same time, this is from spaceweather.com, there was an X flare, an X1.5 flare, on March 9th, 2011. By the way, I was living in Portland at the time, and there was a crazy protest against the city of Portland's plan to merge the FBI and Portland police. And there were a lot of us that went there in a flash mob. We were very angry. We were very pissed off. We were not liking what was taking place in our city. And that protest also took place during the solar flare. There's a lot of information here, and I'm going to be getting into more of this in a 130-page PDF that I want to release after this presentation. But I want to point out that there's also solar influence over the rise and fall of civilizations. And Maurice Cottrell has been doing a lot of research in this area for some time. There appears to be a correlation, according to the work of Maurice Cottrell, between the rise and fall of civilizations and the rise and fall of radiation from the sun. He put together the following charts, which illustrate a long-term envelope of sunspot activity deriving from the center graph of carbon-14. More carbon-14 is absorbed in the growth rings of trees despite or during the solar minimum. Solar minima also correlates with many ice ages. The Mayans disappeared during a solar minimum. And he continues his research, which I'll get into in the PDF, that deals with how the sun's magnetic field reverses every 3,700 years. And when that happens, we get a rise and we get a fall of population rates. And this all deals with how the sun affects fertility. Solar activity has also been linked to genetic mutations, changes in the DNA. Increased sexual activity, as if that's a surprise. Increased energy in the body can lead to an increased libido and sexual desire of a variety of sorts, just like when we have more solar flares, we'll have a wide variety of emotions. Increase in sexual activity obviously leads to an increase in births. And there's many mythologies about the sun, many beliefs. Many ancient societies believe the sun is a goddess or fertility god. We have the Greeks that believe that Apollo was known as the sun god, was the sun god. We have Shamash in ancient Mesopotamia and Amaterasu in Japan. The Egyptians believe that Ra was the sun god, and the Aztecs believe that human sacrifice was necessary to keep the sun moving through the sky. And the Hindus believe in a solar deity named Surya. In yoga today, sun salutations are practiced as a way to connect with the sun. There's also been many UFOs seen around the sun, which is interesting because we discovered magnetic portals connecting the sun to the earth. So there may be a connection with certain phenomena, sunspots, and portals. And that's something that Nassim Harriman has been discussing in terms of ancient Mayan artifacts. There's also a giant sunspot right before Roswell that lasted several months. Solar flares are also believed to increase paranormal activity. And I can see many changes. You can read this, but I'm not going to get into it. Changes in my own life. When the solar cycle started, I had new ideas, a shift in consciousness, and I started to get involved in alternative media in 2003, 2004. But during the peak cycle of 1999, my life was very, very complicated. But the spiritual awakening that came with the Venus transit of 2004, literally to the day my life shifted after that alignment, then I started to become more aware of my own personal life cycles. And so we can all ask ourselves, look at where we were at different points in the timeline, and see where we went through major changes, migrations, moves, relationship changes. And here we are, positioned at the dawn of sunspot cycle 24, which could begin anywhere from now to late 2013 to another peak in 2015, the Free Your Mind Conference in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So the timing of this event, in conjunction with the full moon, I find to be very, very interesting. So solar cycles and the arts, human creativity, new ideas, music, movies, trends, pop culture, so many different changes, be they positive or negative, that's all in the eye of the beholder and the level of consciousness of the people experiencing the changes on the earth. Now, the powers that be use the solar cycle by staging events, panics, wars, This is a really critical part of my presentation, which we have very little time for. But they do this to provoke a certain emotional response in human beings on earth that are flooded with an excess level of energy in the human body. A sophisticated strategic use of problem reaction solution, launching certain projects forward during solar peaks and celestial events, based on the belief that their luck will be magnified. Moving certain goals forward, as I said earlier, during minimums, when they expect the least amount of resistance. Dark occultists behind the powers that be understand the makeup of the human body and our stress responses. Here's what's very interesting. On 9/11, at the specific time that the major events were being televised, the first plane hitting the tower, the second plane hitting the tower, the second building falling, then the first building falling. During those points, those times of the day, there were changes in the Earth's magnetic field, suggesting that human beings, through the emotion of fear, were somehow impacting the magnetic field. And you've heard from David Icke and others that they're feeding on our fear. These are archonic forces. So if they know that when we respond to fear, we change the field this way, it gets very, very interesting. Here's something from NOAA and NASA that also confirms the magnetic flux on 9/11. The realities we have to face is that we're at different levels of our ability to be grounded and deal with this information, to deal with the energy coming in from the sun. And some people are more insusceptible than others. Some people just prefer to be controlled or control others. This is why we can't have a collective shift in consciousness as long as some people are still choosing to remain in a slave state of consciousness. Human beings that are out of alignment with their own truth are the most susceptible to having their perceptions and emotions used against them. So I think the game plan for the remainder of the cycle is to continue to manufacture a civil war and prop up external threats and internal threats. And in terms of the manufactured civil war, we're looking at the gun issue that they're bringing out, pushing people against the wall, hoping people react emotionally. And I see a lot of that. A lot of people's Facebook posts, they're saying that they're ready for a revolution. They're putting themselves out there saying things they probably shouldn't say. Launch new proxy wars, conflicts, military interventions in Africa, Middle East, and Asia. The next solar cycle, the staging of World War III between China, Russia, and the United States, not until 2020. And there's a lot of quantitative information, and it doesn't mean that we can't change it, but there's a lot of quantitative information that they want to go in this direction. And my next documentary film is going to address that issue. How solar activity impacts human beings, chronobiology, is an overview. How we're affected by the sun, different hours of the day. But that's just the start. It gets deeper, much deeper. How solar activity impacts human beings. It's neutral. It's not good, bad, evil, positive, negative. It's energy. And how we are responding to that energy, it's different. We respond to this in different ways. The sun brings a cycle of birth and death, or creation and destruction. Solar flares affect the central nervous system, all brain activity, including the pineal gland, including equilibrium along with human behavior and all psychological, mental, emotional responses, and just about every other aspect of the body. New scientists have talked about it. Does the Earth's magnetic field cause suicides? And what's most interesting about it, there's also been lots of studies on how magnetic fields, natural ones and artificially created ones in labs, can cause changes in the brainwave state, can cause changes in our cells. But here's what's really interesting. The pineal gland, which is in the center of our consciousness, the center of our mind, has a concentration of magnetite. Magnetite was not discovered until 1992 in the human brain, but it was discovered in the 1960s. In birds, fish, and other migratory animals. This is how we are connected to each other. The magnetite in our brain, that telepathic sixth sense. Evidence shows that magnetite is a transducer, linking ambient electromagnetic activity to cellular function. And in the pineal gland, there is a concentration of magnetic crystals. Study finds human eye also emits light, and that we have a sixth sense in our eyes. We're not aware of it consciously, but we're aware of it subconsciously. Now, there's a number of spiritual perspectives, we're obviously going to do this quickly, on how the energies from the sun come in and affect our cells, purge energy, stored emotions in our body. This is why some people flip out that don't know how to naturally release the energy in a positive, mindful way. Manly P. Hall did a lot of research in this area. He gave a presentation on the magnetic field around the human body and how our state of morality, what we do, you can even call it karma, affects the strength of our own magnetic field or aura. So what if solar activity is a catalyst for the travel of souls into the planet via new births, an exit from the planet via new wars? This is a holographic universe, as you've all heard, a spiritual biological video game where we each uniquely work to reach higher levels as we experience the nature of cause and effect in a physical reality. So this is what's important. We have to ground ourselves. Get engaged in exercises that lets you release that energy. Body movements that engage chi energy, like martial arts, dancing, qigong, yoga, being in nature. The body loves that. Traveling, camping. Creative applications of the mind, like writing, building new structures or homes. Creating art, music, documentary films, and it's very important to drink healthy water. And of course, healthy food. Several types of meditations that you can use, from deep breathing to relax yourself, to Vipassana meditation, which is observing your breath as it naturally is, becoming very aware and equanimous at the same time, sun gazing, and of course listening to certain tones and frequencies to bring the human body back into balance. And a grounding cord meditation, to ground yourself, not just breathe deep or observe your breath, but to practice in your mind tightening your clairvoyant muscles, your ability to heal yourself. And this will help you with your creative and manifestation abilities. Together, we can use the mind's ability to affect change at certain points in the timeline. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that we are more capable of manifestation during this particular point in time. That somehow or another, when we have peaks in solar activity, we are more easily able to shift things if we put our minds together selflessly on the same goal at the same time. During a solar peak, during a full moon. For those of you that have seen the film Dark City, that came out in 1998, the whole premise of the film was this man's journey to discover that he had powers. And the reason these archonic forces were attacking him is because there was something special about him. They wanted to know what made him tick. And he never prevailed over these parasitic, etheric, alien forces until he realized how to harness the power of his mind. And that's the purpose of all this information as we now close, that we need to harness the power of the mind strategically and not just react defensively to the changes that are taking place. And I believe and I suggest that we're in human form to learn how to develop those variabilities. And the real importance is what happens to our souls, where we go from here. Not being fixed and stuck in a fear or hope of what's going to happen in the physical realm, because there is a much larger picture that is far higher than what our brains or small brains can even conceive of, what could really be taking place in this holographic spiritual video game. And with that, I want to thank you.